The brain is evolved to look for signals of potential danger. One of the most important is pain. And as neuroscientist Theanne Griffith is about to show me, sometimes that can be a kind of illusion as well.
So what is this?
This is a thermal grill.
Okay.
This is a machine that could give us some insight as to how pain works in your brain.
All right, this is making me nervous already as I'm getting strapped in.
Don't worry. It's all an illusion, actually.
Okay.
And it's comprised of these different metal bars that are either set to a cold or warm temperature. So why don't you go ahead and touch that first bar? It's warm, right? And then the next bar, cold. And then the next one, warm. You see, so they're alternating cold, warm, cold, warm. Now, you want to see what happens when you put your hand down?
Not necessarily.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Ow.
Right? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, what is going on there? It sort of feels cold at first, but then...
Then it gets this kind of burning sensation, right?
Yes, very much so. It feels super hot, like I'm getting burnt.
So it's not 100% clear exactly how this is happening, but what we think might be going on is that basically your brain is getting a little bit confused.
Okay.
It's feeling cold and it's also feeling warmth, and somehow it's interpreting these two signals as pain.
Here's what neuroscientists think is going on. In your hands, you have separate sensors for heat, cold, and pain. Normally, when you touch something slightly cold, both your cold and pain sensors are activated. But the cold ones override the signals from the pain sensors, telling your brain there's nothing to worry about. Unless, in this very unnatural scenario with the thermal grill, you happen to be touching something warm at the same time. Here, the heat signals cancel out the cold ones, leaving you with just the pain ones activated, telling your brain, ouch!
So in that respect, is pain real, or is it just an illusion or a construct of the brain?
That's a really good question. So noxious stimuli is a real thing, right? If you stick your hand in boiling water, that's an aversive stimulus. The perception of a noxious stimuli is real. Pain is more of a construct, right? And it can vary from individual to individual.
Pain is a construct of the brain. How do we know that? You touch a needle, right, and prick your finger. We can draw the anatomy of what just happened. We have very well-defined pathways saying this is pain information. We don't interpret it as pain until it hits your brain.
Pain, not unlike the experience of color, is a construct of the mind. But just because pain is in your brain doesn't make it any less critical for survival.
Pain is a very important learning mechanism for children. They learn what behaviors they can engage in that are safe and what behaviors, well, they should not engage in because they could cause them bodily harm. And there's different mutations that people can have in certain proteins that make them completely insensitive to pain. And so kids do things like bite on their lips or on their fingers when they're very young, and as they get older can engage in risky behavior. So pain is extremely important for us to feel.
Illusions are fascinating. They're like fractures in the matrix. They reveal to us that the way we perceive things isn't necessarily the way they are.
Illusions help us find the cracks in the mortar of that world we've built for ourselves and understand what it is our world is actually made out of and what the brain is actually doing. So most people think of the brain reconstructing the world more or less verbatim, but that's just not true. What it's actually doing is it's getting very little information and it's using that very little information to make a big, grand model of the world.
We cannot process the vast amount of information that is constantly bombarding our senses. Illusions, you can think of them as shortcuts. Shortcuts make us faster, more efficient, with less resources. Based on these snippets of information, we build this more complex simulation of reality.
And that simulation of the world is what we call consciousness.
Consciousness. We take it for granted, but every time you wake up, your brain stitches together all your sensory inputs. The sound of a distant train, smell of coffee, the warmth of the sun, into an experience of the world. And that experience, that awareness of the world, is what scientists call consciousness.
In neuroscience, consciousness is the holy grail.
Humans have been fascinated by consciousness for thousands of years, probably much longer than that.
Take three.
Now, of course, the word consciousness means a lot of things to different people. To some, consciousness means being awake as opposed to asleep, or self-aware, or the contents of my thoughts. But that's not how we neuroscientists think about it. We think of it as something much more basic. It's just internal experience. It feels like something to see the color red, to taste a strawberry, to hear the crack of thunder.
We are complicated biological creatures, but the most central feature of our lives is that we are conscious creatures too. When I open my eyes, it's not just that my brain does some sophisticated processing of the visual information. I have an experience.
During the course of my journey, I've seen how our experience of reality is not what it seems. If my conscious awareness is built from my perceptions, flawed as they may be, how does that work and what does it mean?
So please take a seat.
Some of the first clues trickled in from people like this.
Put your chin on the chin rest.
A lot of very valuable information comes from patients who've had part of the brain damaged. By piecing these various parts together, seeing what was lost, we've come to appreciate the role that these various brain regions play in the creation of consciousness.
We're going to calibrate your eyes first, and so that.
Powerful example of this is the phenomenon of blindsight.
This is a patient who had a stroke in her visual areas in the back of the brain, and this stroke is affecting her visual field.
3 years ago, she felt a pounding in her head.
I had what I thought was a migraine. I actually went to the emergency room because I'm walking around with this area where I can't see.
The stroke damaged a piece of the brain devoted to vision, leaving her with an apparent total blind spot.
That blind spot, it's enough that if you're driving, an oncoming car disappears into it. It's a little anxiety producing and things like that.
In everyday tasks, her eye movements make up the difference. But what happens when she doesn't move her eyes? Neuroscientist Lorella Batelli wants to find out. So she developed a clever series of experiments to pin down just how blind is she really in that spot.
We're using iLink, which is the eye tracking system to make sure she doesn't move the eyes.
She keeps her eyes focused on the center spot. Every time she hears a beep, she has to say if those little dots inside the circle are moving to the left or to the right.
Left.
The eye tracker checks that she's not shifting her gaze.
Right.
When you're doing tests like this, that blind area, what does that kind of look like for you? What does it feel like for you?
When that target pops up in my blind area, I don't see it. Left.
Strangely, even though she says she doesn't see anything in the blind spot, she gets it right more often than not.
Right.
So that some information is getting in,
Yeah, so-
but they're not consciously seeing it, but they can respond to it in different ways.
Exactly. Even if they say I didn't see anything, but you tell them,
Left.
please just tell me whether you saw it or not, then the response would be above chance.
So just keep your eyes closed, okay?
What's going on? To probe deeper, Lorella lets me give the patient a different version of the challenge. I put a miniature screwdriver in her blind spot.
Okay, I'm gonna have you open your eyes and fixate.
Okay.
Okay.
See nothing.
You see nothing?
Nothing.
Okay.
Even though she says she sees nothing, look at which tool she picks.
Now turn over there and look at the objects. Tell me what you think you saw.
The screwdriver.
Yep. I'm gonna try another one.
Next, I display a tiny wrench.
Did you see anything?
No.
No? Okay. Look over there and guess what you think was there.
I think the wrench.
Yep.
I'm gonna guess the scissors.
Good job. Right. Scissors.
Time and time again, she makes the right choice.
Amazing. So, it seems to be that you're saying you're not seeing anything, yet when I'm asking you to choose, you're pretty much getting it correct. So something is getting in.
How is this possible? It's as if she sees the tools but doesn't know it.
They actually saw something, but they're not entirely aware of it.
Information is getting in, affecting our behavior and how we're responding to the world around us without there being a conscious perception of that piece of visual information.
Correct.
I'm going to go with the hammer again.